Hello everyone, welcome to this mentoring professional session on how to search for a job in a different way. And again, seeing some usual faces, so welcome to you all. I'd like to introduce you to Phil Soffe, who is our presenter, and we welcome you, Phil. Please, I'll hand over to you and let me know when you want to share your screen.
Sure, okay. Firstly, thanks ever so much, Deb, for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak to all you great individuals. Hopefully we can present a couple of different ideas for all of you in terms of how to approach the job market moving forward. So with no further ado, I will share my screen with you and we will begin the presentation accordingly. So firstly, hopefully everyone can see that at the moment. So in terms of starting the presentation, I think it's probably only right that I just give you a little bit of background about who I am and what I do. So I've got around about 20 plus years recruitment experience. I've worked for sort of a couple of the major players within the recruitment world. So I spent 10 years with the Spring Group, a further 9 years with Hudson, and the last 3 years I've spent with a boutique recruitment agency called Connected Consulting. During that period of time, obviously, I've really got to learn the sort of buying behaviours and habits of a lot of hiring managers and recruiters, but also on top of that, I've worked with some fantastic individuals with a really diverse range of skills. The sort of clients that I support are quite rich and varied, so it can be anything from a fintech through to a major listed sort of company. I've also worked through difficult periods within the economy. So 2008 recession is quite a notable one. And of course, currently working through the pandemic as well. Now, from my side, what I want to do is sort of go through and hopefully help re-energize your job search moving forward. So some of that will be by providing some guidance to help you sort of attract and basically find those sort of hidden opportunities that may actually be out there in the marketplace. But I also know what it's like from a candidate sort of point of view. It's not a particularly enjoyable job. Looking for a new job, I'm still yet to find a candidate who will turn around and say that they thoroughly enjoy the search process. So I know it's stressful, particularly in the current environment. So if I can just give a few hints and tips, and if you take away just one thing from today's presentation, then from my side, it's been a really worthwhile exercise. So the next part, I just want to give you a few different ways in which we actually can go to market to find different opportunities. So I'll just read some of those off. So we got networking, we got researching companies, we've got LinkedIn, we can make direct applications via company websites. Of course, we have recruitment agencies, there's a variety of job boards in place, and then we have professional groups and events, social media, and some people in fact actually start up their own business. So to give you some insight, in the recruitment world, APSCO, which is the governing body for recruitment, they've had more applications this year for new companies than ever before, as people are looking to go and build up their own businesses sort of moving forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on some of those different areas, but most prominently, it will be probably the first 6 that I would say are the most prominent to all of you. I think the other thing that is probably worthwhile highlighting at this stage is the fact that when someone goes out to find a job, it's not necessarily the best person who always secures the job itself. So there's lots of different factors in terms of identifying that job, and the hiring manager might take into account financial package, geographical factors, locational factors, a whole range of different sort of things. So just be mindful of that. But without any further ado, we will crack on. So the first thing that I would say is absolutely you need to leverage your own network, and a lot of people will refer to this as your hidden job market, and it's all about sort of being able to tap into a new network that perhaps you don't actually currently have access to. And a lot of it's based around sort of relationships, sort of building as well. But if I go through some of the key softer landing points at the beginning, I would say look at your friends, your business colleagues, ex-bosses. They're all your allies. They all want to help and support you moving forward. So really, really lean heavily on this. Many organisations have strong employee referral programs in place. ex-business colleagues, ex-bosses, may just have the inside track on internal or pending requirement, and unless you're in regular contact with these people, you may not be fully aware of that. So really what we want to do is we want to create a bit of noise about you, help build your awareness, and hopefully by reaching out to your network, it can uncover something that perhaps you're unaware of at this stage. So start with a soft contact, your friends, business colleagues, and ex-bosses. And then thereafter, you want to sort of build into other contacts that perhaps you don't actually have access to at this moment in time. So don't just focus on your network, ask for introductions, referrals. People that you're working with will know great people, and you really need to sort of tap into this experience. Join groups, attend events. A good thing to do is if, for example, you're on a training course and you really enjoyed the contribution that perhaps someone made on that course, then immediately leverage and reach out to those people accordingly. And then the final bit is sort of engage with them in a really meaningful way. And this really comes down to strong relationship building. So a bad relationship is very much something that's just one way. A good relationship is very much a two-way sort of process. So I work by the mantra of two things, that if you make someone feel good or you're adding value, ideally both I might add, then of course that's going to really sort of help you when you're engaging with people sort of outside of your own network. So just be mindful of those parts. And by the way, I'm happy to field any questions at the end of this. So I'm going to glide through the slide deck and then we'll just open up to a full sort of Q&A after. LinkedIn, this is again quite an interesting one. I think we're sort of having to adopt a new way of searching now. And LinkedIn is arguably the most prominent and notable online tool available to us. So it's a bit of a haven for sort of hiring managers, recruiters, business associates and such like. So it's really, really critical that you become really quite prominent on LinkedIn. So for any individual out in the marketplace looking for a new opportunity, it's not just about making external applications, is about you being identifiable. So you want to be visible. So the first thing I would say is absolutely learn the functionality. So the more you understand the platform, the better it will work for you. And ultimately you're looking to optimize your profile. There's lots of online content. There's lots of support videos available, all free, I might add. So I would actively encourage you to really learn implicitly the functionality available within LinkedIn, and that will invariably help you moving forward. Second part is engage. And I know for a lot of people, this is a really difficult sort of area because it takes someone completely out of their comfort zone. But I would actively encourage you to create and post content, comment on posted articles, and join groups as well. There's a hell of a lot of people at the moment who are in the same position as arguably most of the people on this particular call. And there's a really good support network within sort of LinkedIn. But certainly if you want to create, visibility of yourself, you've got to start posting valuable content, and you've got to start commenting on posted articles. So just embed it into your job search plan, sort of moving forward, and it really will make a powerful difference. Connect, obviously you want to build your network out and expand it as much as you possibly can. I've seen many people who perhaps have come from a permanent background, been in one organisation for a number of years, have a very limited network amongst them, and they're having to build that network from scratch. You may be someone who's overseas but looking to relocate to another country, and again, you may find that you're actually in a situation where in that new country, you have zero contacts and no network. So really put some effort in terms of building out that network. And there's lots of different hints and tips that we can give you around that. And perhaps I'll field some of those on the Q&A at the end. If you're applying for a role, this is probably quite a simple one in my opinion, but it's surprising how many people don't do it. but try to find a mutual connection to the employer and reach out to them. It will make a powerful difference. So if you're applying for a direct position, and on the application you can put in there that you know a certain individual within that business and they're happy to endorse you, scream it from the rooftops, because that will guarantee to take you up the priority list within the hiring manager's views. And then the final part is you've got to sync your LinkedIn profile with your CV itself. And the reason that I say this is people more often than not now are going out and they're talking to hiring managers, recruiters, and they're doing a lot of due diligence on you. So if you've got a LinkedIn profile that's not synchronized with your CV, or vice versa, then that could potentially create a bit of an issue sort of moving forward. So that's definitely something else to be mindful of. At this stage, does anyone have any questions before I skip on to the next slide?
You can all unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question. Happy for you to do that.
No, shall I just carry on and go?
Yeah, while you're on that, while you're there, Phil, just a quick one that I think is worth pointing out, that the syncing of the LinkedIn profile shouldn't be a duplicate of your CV. It's just a quick pointer that people can then get more detail off your CV. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, and Dev, I'm really pleased that you've mentioned that. So what we're not advocating is to be in a situation where it's an identical replication of your CV on your LinkedIn profile. But the concerns that people will have is, for example, if you've got a CV and it's got in there, you know, and you're applying for, let's say, project management roles, and it's got project manager, project manager, project manager all the way through, but your LinkedIn profile is test manager, test manager, test manager, then they're not syncing up with one another. So it's really more around the sort of the job titles that are synchronized and the dates align and the companies align. So they will always cross-check that. So it's just making sure the alignment's in sync with one another.
Okay. Another question I've got here now in chat is, which may not be linked to this particular point, but it's a question worth bearing in mind as we go forward, is how do you get back into work having taken a 3-year break, especially in this current climate?
Yeah, there is
if you're going to cover it later on, Phil, then that's fine.
Yeah,
but,
well, I'll make a note of that, and then I'll come back to that straight after. So what I do is, I think if I go through each slide and then open it up to questions, and then we'll do the formal Q&A at the end.
That's fine. There's one more on the LinkedIn bit, if you don't mind. This is from Joydeep. Should we upload our CV on LinkedIn or not?
That's a really good question. Now, I'm a bit of an advocate for you know, adding as much documentation and content to your profile as you possibly can. So in my opinion, I would recommend that someone does that. I don't think there's any harm whatsoever in terms of attaching a CV as a readable document on there, and anything else that you may have. So you might have a portfolio of work, you may have examples of you know, pieces of work that you've delivered in the past. Feel free to upload that content. It will just make your profile stand out a little bit more. So that's a yes from my side.
Okay, but how? Okay, in that case, then how does that compare with if you then have to customize a CV for a specific role? Because you've published one CV, but your customized CV will say something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think most people. I think that's a really good question, Dev. And I think most people will have in place a master copy, which is pretty reflective of the overall skills and experience they have. I completely agree that you have to, in today's market, you've got to tailor and tweak your CV according to the role that you apply for. But typically speaking, there's not too many dramatic differences between the two. It might just be that you're further highlighting a specific project within your career history today, maybe a specific you know, job role that's particularly relevant to the opportunity in question. So I think if you've got a strong master copy and that's reflective of your LinkedIn profile, I genuinely wouldn't worry too much about sort of having 7 different variants of your CV.
Great. Okay. And another one that just come in. And sorry, I know you want to wait till the end, but I think this is also relevant to this slide, so it's worth going through them. Are you aware of tracking software used to find keywords in LinkedIn?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there are. And actually, interestingly, in a couple of slides, I go through a little bit on keywords. So I might just pause on answering that question until I've skipped through a couple more slides. Okay.
Okay.
We do cover that a bit further on.
Sure. And just on that point, Joy, I don't know whether it is you're asking this question from the perspective of that you want to track keywords on LinkedIn. But one of the things that I think sometimes works well is that look for if you do a job search for the jobs you're looking for and see the people who come up. If you're not in that first 100 people, let's say, then you need to really look at your profile and see how else can you make yourself come up with search bar. And sometimes it's better to do it as a second login on LinkedIn, so that you can then track yourself. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, carry on. Phil, sorry.
And do you know what, Dev? That's excellent advice as well in terms of what you're giving, and we'll touch on a little bit of that as we progress forward.
Apologies if I've stolen your thunder, Phil. Sorry.
no problem whatsoever.
Go ahead.
Right. Okay. The next part is the research part, and the real people who have success in the sort of employment market are those that take a genuinely blended approach. And I know it's a thankless task looking around for new opportunities, but this research part is a really key aspect to any kind of job search that someone's going through. And I've really just broken it down into sort of 3 areas. Now, one of those will be research local businesses within an area that's perhaps within a 30-45 minute radius of your home. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that. You can go onto Google, you can go onto LinkedIn and do sort of, searches which are based on a radius. And I think many people are actually really surprised by how many organisations appear that they were maybe aware of, but weren't aware they were within a decent commuting distance at their home location. And on top of that, I think it's also worthwhile highlighting that there could be a lot of smaller businesses that perhaps don't have a recruitment budget in place to go out and advertise for a role, or perhaps don't have the expertise to go out to an external market. So, very much rely on sort of word of mouth, or perhaps internal referrals or direct applications for just active job seekers looking in. So my advice is definitely go through and try and build a list of organisations within a sort of 30-45 minute radius of your home location, and see which ones have a synergy with your skills and experience today. So that's one of the first things I would certainly highlight. The second part is research competitors of your previous or current employers. And this makes a really powerful difference. So for example, if you've been working with BT for several years, then the obvious businesses to look out for might be an O2, it might be a Vodafone, it might be a Virgin Mobile. And because you have that industry expertise behind you within a competitor in their marketplace, that's a really powerful proposition for many organisations. So just try and find competitors aligned to your previous or current employees, and maybe just go through and build a bit of a matrix so you can get a picture of how that looks moving forward. Moving on from there, the next step down is looking for companies with synergies to your previous or current employees. So that's considering those where there can be quite an easy sort of skills transfer. So that might be a HR, marketing, or IT. So for example, in the IT world, if you're working within a technology department but is solely focused on sort of cloud services, then one of your avenues might be looking at sort of managed service providers that offer a cloud servicing service. So just look at where the synergies are as well. And again, that will help you build out a portfolio of clients that you can potentially target moving forward. And once you've identified so many organisations, one of the first things that I recommend that people do is go to the website, go to the careers page and see what they're currently advertising for at this moment in time. Some won't have any career opportunities on there, but will have an option to connect with them anyway. So it's very much worthwhile certainly doing that. But there may just be that perfect requirement on there that aligns perfectly to the skills and experience that you have. So actively encourage you to go in and directly apply to targeted companies. The other part behind that is a lot of internal sort of recruitment teams. They're very much targeted on looking at the different media channels in which they secure talent from. And a lot of people want to push people towards that sort of career page. So, you know, it's a bit of a tick in the box for any end organisation if they recruit someone directly through their careers page. So absolutely go out there and do that one. So just try and, once you've broken down the companies, try and find out potentially who some of the decision makers are within the relevant functions that you're dealing with. Don't be afraid to make a cold contact with them. But what you want to do is you want to sort of make a soft landing. Ideally, you will know insiders within any of those businesses. And actually, if you go through your first and your second connections within LinkedIn, you'll actually be surprised by how many people you may know within those businesses. So hopefully that gives a bit of a better idea around the research part. Does anyone have any questions based on that?
Nothing on chat at the moment, but
Okay.
if anyone does, please unmute yourselves.
I'll give it a couple of seconds. Okay, well, hopefully that's all quite straightforward. I will move on to the next area. Right, okay, job boards. This is the bane of many people's lives. You will find that you will go into a black hole more often than not when you make an application online. But the reality of the situation is it really comes into that sort of blended approach about leveraging your network, using LinkedIn, researching your companies and using your job boards. And people do find jobs from here. The job boards work in a couple of different ways. You can respond to an advertised requirement on there. Alternatively, you can have your CV and profile on the job boards for people, recruiters and talent acquisition managers to go out and actively search. And they are frequently used. So most recruitment agencies and most on-site in-house recruitment teams will have sort of memberships with a variety of different job boards. So the advice I would give you around this is update your profile regularly. By simply updating your CV on a weekly basis, that can make a powerful difference. You may ask the question why, and part of the reason for that, a lot of the job boards, you can search by relevance or you can search by date. So if you're updating regularly, you're going to be captured in both camps. So for some individuals, they may only want to see active candidates that have come onto the market in the last 7 days. So if you've updated in the last week, you're going to be caught. If you just leave your CV rolling on there, you may or may not be caught. So, you know, just make sure you go in there and you sort of update it regularly in terms of that, so you can at least be captured by the relevance or the date side of things. And the other part I would, you know, strongly recommend is you identify the best job boards for you. So there's lots of major players out there. So that can be anything from sort of Reed to Indeed to Jobsite to CW Jobs, CV Library. All of them are quite mainstream in terms of what they do, but again, they offer very strong sort of membership packages to any kind of recruitment business to sign up for. They're quite cost effective. So certainly utilize those, but find out which ones work best for you. But there's also a number of sort of specialized job boards, for example, which would be like Boolerang, Hired, which are very much leveraged towards tech jobs. So again, what I would advise is that you go out and you research which ones work best for you and get your CV on there if you're looking around, if you're comfortable with that, of course, and then just make sure that when you see an opportunity, you respond quickly to it. So the searching for jobs and the responding to adverts part, I think it's really quite an interesting one. So when you go into many of the job boards, it allows you to search by employers alone. And this probably goes against what most recruitment consultants would advise you. But my view is look at those job opportunities first, because if you can avoid the middleman, then, and you can go direct to the end employer, then why not do it? So just marry up on there, have a look at the opportunities, cross-check it with the careers page of the organisation, and get an application in with both avenues as well. So do it on the careers page, but also do it via the job board as well. What I would say is good timing is absolutely everything within the market at the moment. So if you see an opportunity, apply immediately. Yeah, if you leave it a day, 2 days, the likelihood is they could have had a couple hundred app responses, and then you could be quite far down the list. By the way, there is a huge amount of volume in terms of people applying for jobs, but you need to be mindful of the fact that not all of them are relevant to the opportunity themselves. So you might get 200 app responses coming in, but actually only 20 are applicable for the role in question. So make sure there's a good suitability when you apply. And then on the agency sort of advertisement side, one simple little trick that I think you should be sort of mindful of is multiple agencies will advertise the same role. So to give some insight, when a client comes out to us, they may also go out to 2, 3, 4, 5 other agencies with the same brief, the same job description, and invariably that role will be advertised by several different agencies, and you'll quickly identify which agencies are advertising the same role. So just make sure you go in and prioritize those. So for example, you may have a relationship with one of those agencies. A sneaky little trick might be, you've seen it's clearly the same role. You might turn around and say, oh, I've been approached by L'Oreal, for example, but I thought I'll come to you first because I know you. That will just sow a seed in the sort of recruiter's mind based on the fact that they won't possibly want to lose you to perhaps another agent. So it's a sneaky little trick, but sometimes it works quite well. And it often sort of just creates that sort of higher level of interest as well from the recruiter as well. So that's just a little bit on job boards. Does that help? And do we have any questions on those?
While we're waiting for others to ask, actually there is one from Jody. For jobs posted by an agency as well as directly by the employer, which is more advisable, advising through the agency or directly?
Well, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot on this one, Dev, and I would encourage a direct application. Okay. I don't think there's necessarily any harm having a conversation with an agent about it, but you have to bear in mind, some of it will come down to overall sort of suitability, but it will also come down to who gets visibility of that profile the quickest. And most in-house recruitment teams at the moment, and this has been a little bit of a game changer for us, are more heavily targeted on direct sourcing where they possibly can. And they will always prefer to have someone through directly because they're not paying out a fee if they can secure someone themselves. Okay. So I think if you saw the opportunity, a lot of agents would disagree with me on this, but I would encourage you to bypass a third party and get in front of the client. And there's no guarantee that if you speak to the agent that they will actually submit you to the end client.
Okay, that's interesting. I hope that answered your question, Joydeep. Just as a follow-on from that then, Phil, you're talking about multiple agencies. I mean, I've been in the boat where a role has come up from multiple agencies. And in fact, in reality, 2 agencies have spoken to me about both roles. Yes. Should you apply through both agencies or should you just go through one?
So again, a really good question. I actively encourage people not to duplicate. Okay. Part of the reason for this is it doesn't look good on the candidate, it doesn't look good on the agent if you've made multiple applications to the same business. I think this is where sort of a final decision and transparency will come into play. So the question, I would turn it back in that scenario. I would turn it back onto the agency I would first of all look at which ones from a reputational point of view do you think will serve your best interests. Do you have a previous relationship with them? But a killer question I would ask would be, are you definitely submitting my CV across to the end client? Because if you're not, XYZ agency is more than happy to send my profile across. So I'd like confirmation from you that you're definitely forwarding my profile on to the end client. And if you ask them to commit to that online in writing, to say, look, can you drop me an email confirming you're definitely sending me, you've got them at that point. So that gives you the assurance that it's gone across, because a lot of, and I'm going to pay a bit of a disservice in many respects to the recruitment industry, but there's so many candidates they're speaking to that there is no guarantee your CV will be sent across to the end client. So you want to push someone into the corner, because quite frankly, if they're not going to send your CV, but you know another supplier is more than happy to, of course you want to go with that option.
Sure. And I guess the same thing applies to when they ask you to say that, because some agencies ask you to say that they will be your only representative for this role. I guess the way to do it in that instance is say, right, I'll be happy to do that as long as you're definitely submitting my CV.
100%. And I think that's a great strap line as well, Dev, to have on there. So I'm more than happy for you to represent me under the proviso that you give me formal confirmation that you're submitting my CV to the end client.
Sure. Okay, that's good.
So it's an excellent point I might add.
No, definitely. And then just something about updating profile. I've heard that one of the best ways of sort of to get your profile up there is on a Friday you take down your profile, or you take down your CV, and on the Monday morning you upload it again. And it's a bit of work, but if that's what it takes to get your profile recognized more on the searches, then is that a good approach or not?
I don't think it's necessarily even a case of taking your profile down and putting it back up. It can just be going in there, making a nominal change to your profile. It might be you change one word and you resave it, because that will be logged as a change. So what I want people to do is be in a situation where they know how to be found, and they need to increase their opportunities to be found not only by relevance but also by date range. And from to put you in a sort of a recruiter's sort of shoes, if they're running a search and they're getting 300 candidates over the last month with all the skills that you're looking for, they might turn around and say, well, look, that's too large a number to manage and work through. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run it for the last 3 days and see which profiles are coming in the last 3 days, because clearly they're active, they're looking, and they've updated so recently, you can make contact with them easily.
Sure. Okay, that's great. Thank you. No other questions.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Deb. I will move on to the next page. Right, recruitment agencies. I think quite rightfully, a lot of recruitment agents get a lot of bad press. Some of it is fully justified, I might add. I also feel that some of it probably isn't. But like all industry sectors, there's good people in the industry and there's bad people in the industry. And I think my key bit of advice to someone is go out there and select the right recruiter. So think about your industry experience, think about the job role and capacity that you work in, think about the client coverage that a recruitment agent might have, think about their reputation. And one of the best ways to do this is you can go online and you can search. So on LinkedIn, you can go in, you can search by for recruiters in a specific sort of geographical location, by sector and such like, and maybe get something that way. But I think one of the best things to do is just simply ask the question, the people you know. So people within your network, ask them, who are the best free recruiters that you worked with in the past? Do you mind facilitating an introduction? And it will give you a much better platform moving forward. Perhaps even look at your own career. Who's placed you in the past? Maybe go back to those individuals if they're still in the business, and do your due diligence on the recruiters that you're speaking to, because there's a lot of people in the market who might be, I don't know, we're selling for example, mobile phone plans only 6 months ago, and now they're in there as a senior recruitment consultant, or badged as that, but actually don't have the depth of experience or the ability to represent people in the right way. So just be really, really selective and quite smart in terms of how you go out and sort of, recruit, identify those good recruiters that can help you. And I think one of the things is about knowing what a good recruiter's like. And for me, I bracket it down into sort of really 4 sort of key areas. And that's one who has great empathy. This market is horrendous at this moment in time. And I can guarantee everyone on this particular call that we're having at the moment, if we went back 12 months, all of you will be in work. Hands down, that would be the case. But we're just in really, really unusual times. So you're looking for a recruiter who understands and kind of feels the pain that you're going through, because we know it's not an enjoyable task to be looking for a new job. Secondly, you want someone who's knowledgeable in the area. So that might be from they just understand the recruitment process inside out, back to front. It may also be someone who has a specific specialism in a certain area that's aligned to yours. So you're looking for a recruiter who's knowledgeable. You want someone who's going to be an advisor, so someone who can give you good advice, hints, tips. And then the final one, and arguably the most important one, is someone who can connect you. So I would call that a connector. So you will facilitate the introduction between yourself and the end client, so a good connector. So they're really the 4 things that make a really strong recruiter. So just be mindful of that. The engagement part is absolutely key. And sometimes there's a difference between success and failure for many candidates. And we appreciate it's a completely thankless task looking around for a new job, but you've got to be the perfect job seeker out there. So what is the perfect job seeker? So for me, it's about somebody who's friendly, enthusiastic, but is really, really quick to respond to any request for information that comes in. And of course, you've got to have enthusiasm and a real passion for the opportunity that perhaps you're discussing with the recruiter themselves. And just to give you some insight, as a recruiter, we're held to quite tight SLAs. So we might, for example, get a job role through. We might only have 24, 48 hours in which we need to send CVs across. So that timeliness and speed of response is going to be critical. And if we've got perhaps 8 or 9 suitable candidates who tick all the boxes for what the client's looking for, and we can only send 3 CVs, often those 3 CVs that go across are those that have been effortless throughout the process. So they've been really easy to deal with. They've been engaging, they've been responsive to information requests, and so on. So just try to engage in the right way, because it will make a powerful difference. Like I say, there'll be some people that you won't have a huge amount of respect for, like any kind of industry sector, but just bite your tongue a little bit and just play the game. It will make a difference to you. The next part is about build confidence. So what you want to do is you want to demonstrate your capability and explain why you're suitable, almost in layman's terms, to a recruiter. So a recruiter might really understand the recruitment process, but actually they may not understand the job role that they're sourcing that well. So I think you can build credibility by helping to educate that recruiter that you're speaking to. And again, that will really help you in terms of going forward for that final job. And then the final part is really about look to build sort of relationships. So be respectful, ask for advice, share information that you feel could be of interest to the recruitment agent. So, in terms of sharing information, that could be anything from, you might have seen a certain market trend, you might want to upskill, and the recruiter in the technology area or the job function that you work in, any kind of information that you can share with them will be great. And the other bit that I would say is stay in contact. So from a recruiter's point of view, our nirvana situation will be, we get a new requirement through from an end client and we don't have to do a search. We know we've got 3 or 4 people immediately available, active, looking for a job, and then straight away within 10 minutes, we've got the role done. And that's the nirvana situation for a lot of recruitment agents to be in. So do stay in contact, build awareness, but just make sure you're not borderline harassing people. So even a quick email every couple of weeks to say, hi there, Phil, just wanted to say hi. Don't forget about me if something comes up. If you need any help in any way, please feel free to reach out. It makes a powerful difference. So I would actively encourage you to do that. So on that note, in terms of recruitment agencies, do we have any questions?
Nothing on the chat at the moment. If anyone would like to ask, again, please unmute yourselves.
How do you deal with, so, you've sent your application off, you've had that initial conversation, everything seems to be going well, and then you just get ghosted?
Yeah, I think that's it's probably the bane of most people's lives. I think it's really important to follow up, and in many respects, I think you have to probably take some responsibility for that. I also, and as bad as this sounds, you probably have to have a minimum expectation level of some people, and I know it's such a terrible thing to say, but not all recruitment agencies will come back to you. I think the only advice I would give you is follow up. It might be on a weekly basis, for example. So, for example, if you've applied for a job role, and then 3-4 days later, you just follow up with a quick soft email, hi there, just to reiterate, really interested in this position. Please, can you provide me with an update, but try to time bound it. So if I haven't heard back from you by, early next week, then I'll follow up again. Hopefully that's okay with you. But just try to do it in a soft way. But I think continuously keeping that engagement up is a really important thing. One thing I can tell you about recruiters is they don't like delivering bad news. So if I haven't heard anything back from the client, there's a bit of a personal and emotional side to it that people just don't like naturally doing that, but good recruiters will happily do it. Hopefully that answers your question, Kaz.
Yeah, lovely, thanks.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Okay, shall I skip on to the next slide, just for a few hints and tips?
Sorry, there is another question, Phil.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't mind. Okay, so this is on behalf of someone who says they have 20 years of project management experience in the events industry, which is obviously totally been decimated. They are they're formalizing their Prince 2 foundation and practitioner, and really they're trying to maximize their offer. The tricky part is identifying avenues where they are considered a suitable candidate. So I guess this is a question to do with changing fields and changing industry. It's something that I've also faced quite a lot of. So my direct experience is in an industry that no longer employs companies that no longer employs, obviously the events industry, and companies outside the industry seem to consider the person a bit of a risk to them due to the lack of direct experience. Any suggestions and assistance will be appreciated.
So I mean, in terms of that, it's not easy in terms of that, because it's really about sort of giving people the confidence that you can switch industry sector with ease. I think it's worthwhile being mindful of the fact that there are a number of organisations still out there who are actually quite, open to the idea. So there's one client that I deal with, which is a large technology business, or global technology business actually, and I put people into that organisation who've come from a really diverse sort of background. So there's been anything from sort of financial services through to retail, through to telecommunications, through to engineering. So not all clients have the view that unless you've got the ideal sector experience, that you won't get in through the door. I think the challenge you have is if you go to certain traditional sectors, they have a very closed door sort of mentality unless you know someone on the inside. So, for example, banking is a great example of that. Really, unless you're sort of entrenched in that sort of financial services sector, it's going to be really, really difficult to to get a footprint within it unless you know someone on the inside. So for me, if you're a really strong project program manager then they're the skills that you have to leverage upon. So, you know, it's about really bringing that out to the forefront, that perhaps within the events industry, you might have managed multiple varying projects within your period of time there. So it could be anything from, I don't know, sort of online systems, content management systems. They might have a people change process element to it. And so I think if you're applying for an organisation, there may be a project where there's similarities despite being a disparate industry sector. So it's just about trying to find out where the loose connectors are. But a good project program manager, in my opinion, can work in any industry sector.
I couldn't agree more, Phil, but I think you're right that it is dependent on the organisation. And sometimes I think also it's worth mentioning that agencies are given a very strict profile of the candidates they're meant to be looking for.
Yes.
And so perhaps you can expand on that a little bit more, Phil?
Yeah, I think so. I think with a lot of recruiters, it depends on the, you almost get two types of recruiters in my opinion. So you get the tick box recruiters, which I call the sort of bums and seat recruiter, who take a brief very, very quickly, have no sort of line management, hiring contact, and will work against the tick list of requirements they have in place. And because of the way the market is at the moment, they know there will be applicants available that tick those boxes. So they will always leverage towards those. Then there's other recruiters who really want to do a bit of a deep dive in terms of what the client's really looking for. And they're asked what I would call more challenging questions about hiring managers. So that might be along the lines of, you know, are you open to people outside of industry sector? Do you think they can bring new ideas and working practices to the table? You know, is that something you've possibly considered before? So you're trying to shape the mindset of the hiring manager themselves. But fundamentally, it's about coming up with your list of reasons towards how you can overcome the industry sector experience and the value proposition that you can bring to the end organisation.
Okay, thanks for that. I think, Val, the summary there is, and it's something I've faced myself in my career, the best way of getting into a new industry is to seek through your network, because that's the way to get in.
And the other thing is as well, Dev, and this is where you've got to become, as a job seeker, a bit of a researcher, try and have a look at the background of the person who's possibly hiring for the role, you know, and see whether they've come from a diverse sort of background itself. So you might have an end client and the hiring manager move from industry X to industry Y. You know, and on your application, you can put in there, you know, I noticed actually you moved from industry X to industry Y. You know, that's something that I'm keen to do. I'm sure you can understand the pain points that, you know, a job seeker like myself will be going through. Really open to a conversation, even if you can give me some help and guidance. So try and find out a little bit about the background, if at all possible, about who the hiring manager is. Okay,
great. And one final question from Darren is, how do you find those specialist agencies that can work for us, e.g. project management, recruitment agencies?
Yeah, I'm going to say, so there's a number of different ways in terms of this. If you go into LinkedIn, and this is about sort of learning the functionality, if you go in there, type in recruiters, you go to people filters, there'll be a number of different filters within there. If you select the relevant one aligned to your sort of career history, the likelihood is that will bring up sort of people. You can do Google searches around it, but I still absolutely advocate this one. And it's about reaching out to people within your network who can recommend good people. And that will make a really, really powerful difference. And when you approach a recruiter in that situation, it's much easier to get a connection accepted when you say, I've just spoken to Dev, he's spoken really, really highly about you. Thought it'd be beneficial for the two of us connect. Are you open to a conversation? And it's just a much softer sort of landing. So I'll always go for the referral recommendation route in the first instance. Outside of that, I would then look to do the sort of, you know, the Google searches, LinkedIn searches to find people within sector.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Before you carry on, just to say, just do a time check. We're 10 minutes to the hour. I'm happy to continue this session if you haven't quite finished by then, or if you're still answering questions. And I'm also asking our participants, attendees, if they're willing to stay on, and if they have further questions, then I'm willing to continue this as long as we have that.
Well, the good news is, Dev, I'm on to the last slide now.
Oh, fantastic.
So hopefully we're edging towards it anyway. So
sure, carry on.
I know this is, again, keywords. Everyone hears it out in the marketplace. You know, ATS systems are actively used, recruiters' internal sort of databases that they use, the way we search on job boards, the way we search on LinkedIn, we do it via sort of Boolean searches and people filters to find profiles. So, you know, it's so important to get the right keywords into your CV. So two bits of advice I have for people on this side of things. Firstly, dependent on what your job role is, go online and just search for example, we use project manager as an example, search for project manager and look at several different advertisements for project managers and look at the common text that you find within those. So for example, you might see stakeholder engagement, you might see matrix management, you might see risk and issue management, you might see sort of, you know, project planning, you might have sort of, you know, Prince or Prince 2, PMP, PMI, and then build a list of those keywords and make sure you've got them in both your CV and your LinkedIn profile. So that's the first bit of advice I would give you. The second part is there's a number of different sort of word search filtering sort of tools out there. So tagcrowd.com is quite a popular one and can be a useful tool. And one thing I would recommend is if you see a job description and you like it, copy that job description, paste it into TagCrowd, click on the relevant filter, and it will come up with a list of the keywords that have been extracted from that job search, from that job advert. And then from that job advert, look to integrate those keywords into your CV itself. And that way, hopefully, you're not only being found by your job role, but any keywords in there, you're also coming up on the profile. So just be quite clever about that. So they're the two bits of advice I would give on that side. The second one.
Can I just add one more,
yeah,
if you don't mind?
Of course you can.
Just adding to the TagCrowd thing is, not only do you copy the job ad into TagCrowd, but also if you then copy in your CV, you can do a comparison to see how many of those keywords are coming up in your CV and then tweak your CV accordingly.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely right, Dev. And it's just quite a clever way of doing things. And I really firmly believe about searching through current job roles, just seeing where the trend is. And again, that makes a really sort of powerful difference. Next one down, become an online searching whiz. We're in kind of a bit of a new world in terms of job search, and that's why it's so important that you have a blended approach. But go in, understand your Boolean searching. For those of you who may be unaware of it, it's your and, or commands, and such like, your not commands. And go online, start searching. So search on LinkedIn, search on Google. You will be amazed by how many different results you will get just by tweaking your searches a little bit. And many people are advertising jobs, and they are finding candidates from adverts as well. So use that to your advantage. Just really become, you know, red hot in terms of the Boolean searching side. The next one is, you know, it might feel like I'm pointing out the obvious, but I can't put enough emphasis on this. And I'm going to give you a good example in a second. Apply quickly but selectively. So I have two rules. Don't apply for jobs that you're not suitable for. The reality of the situation is there will be a whole list of people out there who are suitable for an application. So just make sure you're applying for jobs that you look at it and you think, do you know what, I really can fulfill that. And I know I've got the skills and experience to do it, so do that. Second part is apply rapidly, because the timing is key. And to give you some insight, we've worked with different clients where we've been sending CVs very quickly to the end client, and they've gone through the interview process very quickly and got through to offer stage. During that process, we've had other applicants apply maybe 24, 48 hours later, who are equally as good as the people going through the interview process. sometimes even better, but have just been a bit too slow in terms of making that application. So speed of response is absolutely key in this game, and it will definitely increase your chances, but just make sure that you're highly relevant for the role that you're applying for. This actually touched on to one of Kaz's questions earlier. So the follow-up. Don't be afraid to follow up on your application. Draw attention to your profile. And I just want to give you one very quick example just around that. So a good friend of mine who's a recruitment manager, he applied for a job, didn't hear back for several days, couldn't understand why he didn't get a response for it, because the end client was asking for extensive cross-border payment experience, which he had done several years work within that particular domain. So he followed up on that, saying, I've seen this advert, just a little bit surprised you haven't come back to me. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that I've got several years cross-border payments, and I've been managing sort of in-house recruitment functions for several years. Within an hour, he had a call back, ever so sorry, we didn't pick up on your application. We've had so many, we couldn't get through all of them. And then subsequently he went through a recruitment process, and a week later he was offered the position. Had he not called up, he wouldn't have got that job. So don't be afraid to follow up. I know for some people it's a really uncomfortable place to be in terms of doing that, but in this market you've got to try and step out of your comfort zone. So don't be afraid to follow up. Worst case scenario is you're drawing more awareness to your current situation. So that's the follow-up part. Social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, jobs are advertised on there. Feel free to look at those. Tidy up your social media. People do due diligence on you now, and they will look across all your social media sort of platforms when going through a hiring process. Be cautious about what you post. If you're posting something that's highly controversial, it could result in some sort of negative sort of opinions around yourself. And that's the last thing that you want to create. Remember, you can't really undo what you post on social media. So just be very cautious about what you put on there. The other part I ask is when I'm talking to many candidates, I ask them if they have a sort of a job search plan in place. And it's surprising how many people don't. They would just turn around and say, well, I've applied for a few roles and I'm not getting much traction, but create a plan of attack. I know it's, really difficult out there at the moment, but have some goals in place, have some clear action points in terms of what you want to achieve, and just have a really good search plan in place. Maybe have create a little list, database of organisations that you're approaching as well, but have a clear job search plan and try to stick to that. And then the final part is you've got to be super kind to yourself. It's been a really unusual year. I think most employers now are pretty forgiving for people who have breaks in employment. So don't beat yourself up. Like I say, if you rewound 12 months ago, all of you are more than likely sort of like being worked now. You've got to remind yourself of the brilliance that you bring to the table, continuously do that, and take this opportunity to learn and develop new skills, because there's an argument that you could be going into your next role as a better employee than from the last business you left. So be really kind to yourself. It's tough, do the hard yards. And if you do take a blended approach, I can guarantee you at some point you will begin to see an improvement in your overall results. So that's me done. I am open to Q&As now. And there's my contact details.
Great. I have a question from, excuse me. I have a question from Darren, who asks, in LinkedIn as a standard user, I assume we cannot use search, we cannot use Boolean searches effectively, is I think what he's asking. Does that mean we should upgrade to premium LinkedIn accounts? I've already responded to say, I think we can. I think you can do searches in LinkedIn.
Absolutely. You can. Sorry, I didn't catch the name of the person who asked the question. What I'll do is at the end, I'll share a presentation, just a PDF with you, Dev, and if you want to send it out to the group, I'll put contact details on there, and then I'm happy to go through how that would work on an individual basis, and just walk and talk how the Boolean search bit will work and the different sort of techniques that you can use.
Fantastic, that's great. And then a question from Val. How is the market at present generally? Are companies employing or waiting for the second wave to pass?
Yeah, so it's a really good question to ask. It's tough, and I don't want to sort of, kind of mislead anyone. I think we're seeing a couple of small green shoots of recovery at the moment. For me, it's about sort of looking at the sectors where there's likely to be more activity. So, that might be sort of, med tech, it might be, I don't know, electric vehicles, it could be sort of digital transformation. Look at those sort of sectors. It is very, very difficult out there. We've seen a minor improvement in terms of the market. I do think that some organisations are also becoming more familiar with remote working practices and are more comfortable to onboarding someone remotely, which perhaps in the past, if they've had a very much an on-premise sort of approach and attitude, then that's beginning to shake up a little bit. But there are opportunities out there. You just got to hunt really, really hard, but it's a difficult market. When will it improve? It's difficult. It's difficult to say. I hope very soon.
Sure. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think you are right with that. It is something that is a developing piece of work, but there are jobs out there. There are a lot more jobs out there than there were, let's say, a month ago. So it's certainly changing and improving, or at least changing all the time.
What I would say also on top of that, Deb, is that everyone on this call, there could be a wave of new candidates coming onto the market when, the furlough comes to an end, and people begin to sort of cleanse their their workforce, and the benefit that everyone has on this call is you're further ahead in the journey in terms of finding a role at the moment, and it is a hard slog. It's like the sort of analogy I use. It's like training for a marathon. You can't just sort of day one expect to be able to do a marathon in sort of day two. You've got to put the hard yards in, and it takes time to build up that momentum, that awareness, get those applications through the sort of process. So you're slightly ahead of where perhaps other people are at this moment in time. So don't give up, keep training, keep doing all the right things, because the right opportunity will come up at some point.
Thank you for that. And then Joydeep is asking, sometimes when I ask my connections to refer me, they don't understand the importance of speed. They take 2 to 3 days. In one case, I applied directly, and after I'd applied, my connection could not upload or refer my CV as it was already there. How can we ask them to help in such a case? Do we ask them to send a recommendation straight to the hiring manager?
I think in that scenario, I think there's a couple of things in there. I think reputation plays a real key in terms of how someone views and sort of values you for the contribution that you made. But I would approach it in 2 ways. I would put the application in, and by the way, name dropping makes such a powerful difference within the application process. If you send over an application to a hiring manager, HR member of staff, talent acquisition, say, by the way, I know Joe Bloggs in the IT department. If you're after an internal endorsement on me, I recommend strongly that you reach out to that individual straight away. That, I guarantee you, will skyrocket you up the list of prospects that they possibly have. And then also approach it from the other way by speaking to your contact and just reiterating that, you would really appreciate it if they could, pick up on the referral as quick as they possibly can, because it will make a powerful difference to you and your application. And what I found at the moment is COVID has, there are some positives from it, because it's created a really strong sort of support community. And I don't think there's many people who are experiencing COVID and don't know someone who's been touched by it. So I think if you ask in the right way, then, I'd like to think that most people would sort of pick up on that quite instantly. But I would approach it from both angles. I would make the application, put the name in, and then I would also approach a contact as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know whether there are any more questions. I think that covers all the questions I've got on here.
Sorry,
People
I've
who
got
registered.
one
Oh,
more.
sorry.
The
Go on, Cass.
benefit of a covering letter.
Good question. So look, this is a really highly emotive one. I think if you're making an application to a permanent position, I think there's value in terms of doing that. The advice I would give you is make sure it's very much tailored towards the opportunity that you're looking at. And one of the things I would do is encourage you to look at the different sort of social media channels that they have and see if you can extract some sort of information from those social media channels that you can then integrate into the cover letter itself. I think if you're going in just straight for a contract role with an agent, I don't think there's a necessity to do a cover letter, and part of the reason I would say that is because the recruiter will be solely focused on your CV. I don't think it's of any harm to have one in the background so you can then follow up saying, by the way, if you want some further information, I've got a cover letter in place. So I think it just depends on what you're applying for moving forward. But if you are, just make sure it's pretty relevant to the opportunity that you're sending across, because we do see lots of cover letters and quite frankly, they're just a repeat of the CV.
Yeah, yeah. And
Got
I
it,
think
lovely.
And I think the other thing to also bear in mind, Kaz, is that if you are doing research on the company, try and use the same terminology that they use, because a lot of times people think, oh, they've got that wrong. They've not used the right terminology. This is what the right terminology is, and it's what's in my CV. But for you to actually get connected with them, it's all of that. You know, it's the usual communication spiel. You try and reflect what the other party is thinking and how the other party speaks or says things, so that they can make that extra bit of connection with you. So if it means tweaking your CV to change the terminology to better meet what is in the job description, then that's what you need to do.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much.
Okay. Any other questions? Great. There was one question that I think might be worth addressing, because we do have some people here from other parts of the world. How do people look at international jobs or look for jobs in countries that are not their own? Do you have any tips or ideas on that, Phil?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to answer, because there's so many different elements to it. So I think the first one is you've got to make sure you've got the right eligibility to work within that country of choice. I think all the time you're outside of that country, it's going to be very difficult to break into that country, because there will be people just on site and in premise in that country that are available for work now. So if you're sort of really committed to relocating in many respects, you've got to get an understanding of the job market, and then you've got to sort of really bite the bullet and just go for it, as long as your sort of financial and personal situation allows you to do that. And then you've got to look to sort of build and grow that network where you possibly can. So to give you one example, I've recently been in contact with, it's a British chap, but he spent the best part of 15 years outside of the UK working for a large consultancy, and he's just returned back to the UK, and he's got no network over here whatsoever. So from his point of view, he's now having to go through that sort of building that network from scratch, building new connections and growing it out, and trying to fast track that as possibly he can. And that's a real journey. So, you know, my advice to anyone looking to explore opportunities abroad is make sure you can work over here. You've got the right eligibility. If you're committed to relocating, then that's definitely on the plan. Then try to get over as soon as you can. Do your due diligence about how many opportunities there are available within that country. So, you know, if you've got a very specialised sort of skill set, then it's going to help you when you land, because you can very quickly identify what those opportunities are. If it's quite a vanilla sort of generalist sort of skill set, it's going to be much more of a challenge. And then you've got to look to build out your network as quickly as you possibly can within that country of choice.
Great, thank you very much. On that note, unless there are any other questions, we will end this session.